You've just joined us for another episode of Pause It For Me. I'm here with my lovely wife, Hannah.
Hello.
And I'm here with a very special guest, Ben Bergeron.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi, how's it going? My first question I just have to ask right off the bat. Are you having a good day? And if not, what can I do to make it better?
It's going all right. I think I could go for a coffee right about now, but obviously we can't do that while we're actively recording.
You know what? We're not above stopping everything right now, all forward momentum, and going out and getting a couple decafs. But I think we're already on a roll here, so we better just
keep going.
Jump off to it. So I met Ben through going to the Kino Ottawa Short Film Festival, and we met kind of tangentially, but I've seen you talk on stage, and I've seen some of your shorts. You seem like a really interesting guy with a lot of creative vision. And then I saw you on stage talking at a panel at Ottawa Comic Con, much the same that I did with Scott Blurton, who we just had on. And I invited you to come on the podcast because I thought it'd be fun to talk about filming with you. So I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate being invited. I don't know who gave you this sense of me as this guy who knows what he's talking about, but
I mean, we all know what we're talking about to a certain degree, and we all have a ton to learn from a totally other degree. You know, every day is a school day, and there's always something to be educated on. So right off the bat, I want to ask you, can you give us some background on you as a filmmaker and how you got into filmmaking?
No, for sure. So I guess I have really wanted to make films pretty much my whole life, since I was a little kid running around. As soon as we got a digital camera that could capture video, I was pretty much trying to make movies. I at first would try to make movies by myself. Then I started trying to do Lego stop motion movies with my friends.
Oh, yeah.
They would never show up, so I'd end up also doing it by myself. Oh. And a lesson I learned very early on that took me a long time to unlearn was that no one's ever going to be as committed to your projects as you are. So you may as well just do everything yourself. While I was in high school, I was, always off by myself. I made basically a feature length worth of Spider-Man fan films. I made 7 altogether.
You're talking Andrew's language here.
Yeah, so I did everything, all the camera work, editing. I played Spider-Man. I played Peter Parker. Did the whole thing. They're so bad. They're so bad.
Do you have a Spidey suit and everything?
Yeah, the suit still fits
Amazing.
me because I had it made when I was 14, and I happen to have remained the exact same size since then. So that's all been good. I got a nice suit, I think for $300 custom made.
Oh wow.
To exactly fit my dimensions then, because I decided that was the one area of the film I wanted to invest money into.
Wow, that's legit. My Spidey suit was much less expensive, and then I customized it myself.
Nice.
Did you play any of the villains yourself?
So I wouldn't be the main actor for a villain ever, but sometimes my other actors wouldn't show up, and I'd be like, okay, well, it's a full face mask for Shocker. I'll put this on. I'll do that role too for a bit. So there's shots where I am the other characters, but mostly I was only Peter Parker and Spider-Man.
Right.
Oh, and there's one scene where I couldn't get anyone else to be a news reporter, so I'm the news reporter in a wig.
It's always fun.
Yeah. But then my friend Graham, who I was working with on those, him and I decided to go off to film school, and we went together to Confederation College in Thunder Bay. Before that, I had actually been engaged with the Youth Active Media program that Youth Ottawa runs, that I'm now in charge of as a participant. And so I got to spend a week making a short film with some other youth, and that was a really good, encouraging experience for me. So after that, I went to film school with my friend. We made a bunch of new friends, a lot of whom we still actually work with. And I graduated, and it was like, okay, now what? I've been just studying for 2 years on how to work on set. I don't really want to just go be a PA. No disrespect to anyone doing that,
for sure.
But that wasn't really the move for me. And yeah, I ended up just happening to find out that around then they were looking for someone to take over running the Youth Active Media program and the associated production company, which was Hot Shoe Productions. And luckily, the people in charge of that were did not know that much about film and were willing to hire a 20-year-old fresh out of film school. So then for the last 4 years, that's what I've been doing.
That's exciting to be able to land something close after film school. And it's a full circle moment because you were there yourself couple years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And now I get to run my own film school. We did our first pop-up film school this year, which was a week-long training course. And we got to actually pay all the participants $500 to participate.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
Thanks to some funding from Real Canada. So that was a really cool opportunity. But yeah, so Hot Shoe Productions is basically a corporate video production company with a social lens, is kind of how we describe it. So we do youth employment. So all of our staff, including myself, we're all under 30. And basically we make a point of, on top of, employing youth who are more experienced and can make stuff through the program, to actually make videos for different clients, a lot of whom are nonprofits that support youth as well, or youth-led organizations. But on top of that, we also run this training and provide those other opportunities. This year we had our first young filmmakers meetup, which is basically an opportunity for kind of branching out to younger people who might not be comfortable going to like just a filmmakers networking event, and they'd be like, oh, I'm 15, I'm not a filmmaker. To give them kind of that opportunity to have their own networking event where they can meet another 15-year-old who also wants to be a filmmaker. And that was kind of the idea there. So we've done our first one of those. We're hoping to do another one soon. And then we're also working this year to develop our first, we're working in partnership with Soul One Productions to develop the first Ottawa Youth Film Festival. So that'll be coming up in May, and it'll be the first time ever, I believe, in Ottawa where there's been an opportunity for a variety of ages of youth to have their film screened and win awards, just like any other film festival.
That's really cool. I wish I had like a community and resources like that as like a young filmmaker. It felt like film school was like the only way to get there in the past.
And that is my exact opposition. I spent thousands of dollars going to film school. I had a great time. I have nothing against them.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to create the opportunity where you can learn on the job and you don't have to spend that money to go to school.
I feel like we've learned the most just by doing and outside of school. I mean, we had a great time as well, but
yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And I definitely can relate to the corporate video sector. I got quite a bit of experience there, but you alluded to this. Tell me a little bit more about what keeps you busy as a filmmaker these days on more of the independent creative front.
Yeah, so me and my cinematographer, Colin, who conveniently also works at Hot Shoe, so we can, we know each other's schedules, which makes it a lot easier to schedule a film. We kind of agreed this year in December that we were going to make one short film every month for the whole year.
Wow.
So we were at Digi 60 and we kind of had this shared moment. We both had a film in it that we had worked on separate films. Like he had shot one for someone else and I had directed my own and shot it. And we kind of said, well, first off, we should work together next year. But second off, what if we made 12 films? One every month? Like, wouldn't we learn so much and get so much better? And, be like potentially the people who can win an award or like, just level up to that game and that level. And that was the goal. And yeah, so we decided then every month we were going to make one short film. So the first one we actually had a guest director, which was interesting. So that's one of two I didn't direct.
And what was that one called?
That one was called Midnight Rain.
Right, okay.
So it was my friend Clayton. It was his own script. It's kind of intended to be a prelude to a longer script, which he's still working on. So hopefully that'll get made sooner than later. But basically, that one I just produced. And I kind of got some practice just producing and getting a sense of the producing workflow. So I could then step in for the next ones and direct. So all but two of them so far I've directed and probably stay that way, which is exciting. But it's definitely been a challenge making one every single month. Like there's a lot of, you can't just bat around ideas forever or like worry about something not being good enough. You kind of just have to make what you have to make. And that's been exaggerated even further because we've done inside of this year the 48-hour challenge and the 72-hour challenge. So both of those are that to an even greater extent. You just have to make something and you have no time to worry about if it's good or not.
Absolutely. You just got to jump into action. Now, I definitely want to loop back around to the 48-hour film challenge in a moment, but I do want to ask, so you're talking about the concept of doing a short film every month. Once you started doing this, was this before or after you started joining up with Kino and producing stuff with that? Because Kino is a monthly film festival that encourages people to make films every month. So it seemed like a convenient fit.
Yeah, no. So I was actually, this is funny. I was actually involved with Kino. I was one of the founding members of the volunteer committee way back in 2019, 2020. So I used to be the volunteer projectionist.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so before Vince was ever involved, actually.
Really?
He joined up like shortly after I did. But that original founding crew have all since moved on. But I knew about it, and we'd kind of handed it off to Vince, and then he relaunched it after the pandemic. So
Right. Okay.
I hadn't really been involved for a while, but I came out in December right after Digi60, and I actually had thrown together a little film very quickly to have screened that I decided to make like 2 days before Kino.
Classic. Yeah.
And we had something in it, and it was good to just kind of get on stage and talk to people.
Yeah.
Because I'd never, I was the projectionist. I never went on stage. That had been kind of my statement back then. So it was kind of good to just get back in there and do that. But yeah, I always knew it was out there, and it was pretty obvious that it would be the right platform to do that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about transitioning from making films by yourself to making films with a larger crew. How big is the average crew for some of your productions? Like, I imagine it ranges on small scales like this, but tell me a little bit about that.
It varies a lot. Like 2 films ago, we just had pretty much me and Colin, and that was it.
Yeah.
We had our actors, of course, but like sometimes that's the crew. And then on our 48-hour challenge, we actually had a crew of like 8-9 people. I lost
Wow.
count. Yeah.
Oh, right on.
So it's really anywhere from 2 to 10 people. And of course, I'm always thinking about it logistically too, because one of the other commitments I made really early on was that I was going to pay everyone.
Oh, yeah, that's nice.
Nope.
So the more people are on
Yeah.
set, the more money this film's going to cost me.
Exactly. Yeah. And the more people that you have on set, it can turn into kind of like a
Like too many cooks in the kitchen.
too many cooks in the
Yeah.
kitchen. Like as soon as one person who isn't the director starts pitching an idea, it's like everybody wants to put their 2 cents in, and you just have to make sure that that person is still steering the ship.
Yeah.
Now, how does that compare to making films on your own? Because I've made a fair amount of films on my own in my bedroom, and I can tell you, shooting alone sucks.
Yeah. Shooting alone is terrible.
Yeah, when you're setting up the camera, especially if you're shooting on a T2i like I did that doesn't have a flip out screen.
Oh my God.
And you need to run an
Yeah.
HDMI over to a TV to see what you're shooting. It's horrible.
Now, I'll give credit to my high school Spider-Man camera. I had a Sony Handycam that did have a flip-out screen.
There
If
you go.
nothing else, like it only shot interlaced footage,
Oh, of course. Yeah.
but it had a flip-out screen, which was absolutely essential for how I was making those films. Oh, and it worked. It was fully automatic. I didn't have to worry about focus or exposure, which was good because I didn't know what those were then.
It's a good way to just like get started and get a feel of things, even
Yeah.
if you don't fully understand the technical side quite yet.
But yeah, no, I definitely filming on my own. I found the big thing would be that I would like get too frustrated too quickly,
Yeah.
and I would leave things well enough too easily, because you just want to get to the edit when you're
Exactly.
filming alone, and you just want to move on to the part that makes sense to be by yourself.
Right. And when you're filming alone, it's like you feel like you're in control of everything, but it can be even more freeing being able to rely on a crew, that it's like, I can put this aspect of the production out of my mind because I know this person's going to handle it, and I know they're going to do a good job.
Oh, exactly. And I'm worrying about, like, I'm having to think about my performance and the framing and the lighting and and it's just like, oh, I forgot this one thing, and I get to the edit and I'm like, well, I'm not reshooting it now, even though it's an easy thing to reshoot because it's just me.
It would be a hassle.
Yeah.
You know?
It's just so much pain I find to do that. But yeah, I got very used to doing that for a long time. What I think happened, like my big transition point was actually working in more of a team for corporate work.
Yeah.
Like kind of one of the things about getting handed the company and as a 20-year-old kid was like, I had to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
Because the adults who were supposed to be in charge, who ran the larger charity that we're part of, they didn't know what was going on. And they didn't know how to run a production company, and they were trusting me to do it. So I had to just figure stuff out. And, one of the first things I had to figure out was how do I work with the team? Because there were freelance youth they had hired who I had to, and not only did I have to learn how to work with the team, I had to learn to work with a team who didn't all have a lot of experience.
Mm-hmm. And you were kind of steering that ship of children, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of weight to be put on the shoulders, but obviously gives you a lot of experience in directing groups of people and making sure that a ship has a rudder that's going in the right direction.
And I learned pretty quickly like what to look for in a crew as well, like what makes someone reliable and what shows someone isn't reliable, and when to count on people and when it's just easier to do stuff yourself.
Yeah, those red flags, exactly.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about this 48-hour film challenge that you just did, I believe, last weekend.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Sure. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so it's the Toronto 48-hour film challenge. So it's part of the global 48-hour film project. Basically, you at launch get a few key pieces of information. So you get your genre. So every team gets a separate 2 genres. So there's like I think 16 possible genres you can get, and each team is given 2 of them, and they're different too from what everyone else gets.
Okay, and you have to combine those 2, or you pick one of the 2?
You pick one.
Okay.
Or you can also combine them, but you have to submit under one.
Okay.
Oh, interesting. So what 2 did you get for that?
So we got horror and vacation.
Oh, fun.
So
Vacation's a genre?
Yeah.
I guess so.
I guess so.
Cool. I should watch more vacation movies.
We actually submitted under horror. So that was fun because we felt the vacation elements we ended up using were less intense. But then you also get a required prop you have to use, which in our case was a postcard, which we had pretty much, they just put it on the fridge and it's not in the rest of the movie at all.
Well, if it doesn't make sense to use it, then,
we had a required character, which was Kylie, who had to be a chef.
Okay.
So that was our, they don't have to be the main character, but you have to include them somewhere in the movie. We actually made this our main character. And we have, as well, they give you a required line of dialogue, which was, in this case, well, who knew? Which we put in right at the end. Yeah.
That's a nice little tag there.
Yeah.
So what were some of the challenges that you faced going through that process?
So the biggest challenge, I think, was the 48 was I was exhausted that whole weekend.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Like already before from work.
Oh, yeah.
So I was just going into this, I was tired. And I came up with the story and I was like, I need to go to bed. And I went to bed. I slept for like 14 hours. I woke up the next day. We got all the stuff for the film. I directed like half the film. And then I said, I need to go to bed again. So I slept for 4 hours in the basement while the rest of the team kept making the movie without me for a bit. And then they had to shoot a scene in the basement and I was still asleep. And I was in the basement. So there is a shot where you can't tell it's a person even, but you can see me technically in the background of the film behind the lead actor. I'm asleep.
That's your cameo.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great.
So thank you to, my DP Colin for carrying everyone through that leg of the film where I was just so physically exhausted that I could not stay awake. And then there were 3 scenes that were made without me.
Again, having people you rely on, it's important.
Knowing
this is the only time ever that I think I have collapsed or given up partway through a film and felt confident that someone else would finish it for me.
Yeah.
I mean, there is something to be said for knowing how to do a lot of things on set. It gives you a really strong creative vision.
I
you
agree.
can sympathize with crew that you're working with. You can ask for specific directions, like the DP. You can ask for specific lightings. You have been there yourself. So.
No, that's super beneficial. And, going to film school was also super helpful for that. I went to really a crew school as opposed to a director's school. And that was really, really good for just learning how all the different roles worked and what, I can give people in order to make their jobs easier.
Now, on these small independent productions, you obviously direct, but then because the crew can sometimes be so small, you have to dip your hands into other aspects of crew. What are some of the roles on a crew that you gravitate towards other than directing versus what are the roles that you don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole? Like, I want to leave that to somebody else. Don't ask me to do that.
I've always liked like I've always liked writing. Like I actually wanted to be an author for a bit. So that's always been a very comfortable role for me. With the 12 short films in a year thing, I've actually only been the writer on one of them. But that's more out of necessity than me not wanting to write the films.
Right.
Was so I could have the time to produce and direct all these. I needed someone else to write them.
Totally makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, like I've always loved writing. I think I'm comfortable operating a camera since I do this at my day job, but I've never loved being a DP. I don't think I'm the best at executing someone else's vision from the camera.
Okay.
When I've shot for myself, I've been able to get the results I wanted, but I've never felt confident being someone else's DP. And I love editing. I'm editing actually a film for someone else this month, so that'll be the first time I've done that in a while. But I love editing. That's something I'm just so comfortable in. I know my way around the software so well because, in part, when I was making films by myself, that was the area where I had control and had the time to actually do everything. So I think I got very comfortable in that space. So I think, yeah, writing and editing have really been my strengths. Acting, I've done a lot of for someone who does not want to be an actor.
For necessity, I guess.
Yes.
Just finding actors that are willing to work for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing that Scott Blurton said. He said he made himself the star of his feature because he knew he would show up every day.
Yeah. That's exactly why I was the main actor in all of my Spider-Man fan films and such. It was partly because I wanted to be Spider-Man, but really it was mainly because no one else was going to be there for all the scenes that I needed Spider-Man to be in.
For sure.
So I had to really do that myself. Yeah. I think I acted recently because I ended up making a really personal film that I felt I really needed to be the person to embody that. Mm-hmm. But my whole crew will tell you I was like the most difficult actor to work with in the world. Like I'll be like, oh, sorry, missed my eyeline. Sorry, reset again. Sorry, can I have a closed set here so I can walk across a room? I don't feel comfortable walking across a room unless there's no one else in it.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
You either end up being the kind of actor who is like, okay, yeah, I did my performance and I trust that the camera got it and great, let's move on. Or you're like me, where I'm doing like one line in one of my scenes and I'm like, okay, can I look at it again after no, I didn't like the way I raised my eyebrow. Let's do it again.
I really liked how what I did was I wrote the script around also that me potentially having to act, which was that I did all my physical acting first in one go, and then I didn't have to do any voice stuff until after because there was no dialogue, only voiceover.
Right.
That's right, because it was a film noir, so
yes,
it was all narrated.
Yeah. So it was really good getting to separate those two components. The voiceover, I got very much back into that recording, like that filming by yourself thing with that, because I was just sitting in my closet screaming into the microphone for what felt like 4 hours, but it was actually like 45 minutes. But yeah, I did so many takes of every line because I just wasn't happy with them.
Yeah.
I can totally relate to that. I used to work in radio and I would repeat the same line over and over again until it lost meaning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're like, what was the purpose of this? Yeah. And then I found as well, it was good that I did it because I've picked up on my own parasites as an actor, which is getting me like more comfortable calling other actors on their parasites. My big parasite has been that I close my eyes way too much and I open my mouth way too much.
Interesting.
It's good to be self-aware of those little nuances. So you can direct that much more detail focused.
Yeah.
Yes.
I learned in college when I was first on camera in college, my thing is I touch my face too much.
Oh yeah.
Just like
everyone
fingers on the face, like on my beard. Just, I don't know why. Now here we are talking about making films. Normally our podcast is about watching films. So I do want to ask, are you strictly the kind of person who loves making films but not watching films? Because believe it or not, I have met people who are like, I love filmmaking, I don't like watching movies.
Well, they're less interested in it because they would rather just make it.
Yeah.
It's about, I like watching movies for sure. I find I struggle to make the time to do it a lot because I'm spending so much time making movies, but also because watching movies doesn't feel productive in the same way making movies does.
Interesting.
And I think you can blame like the culture of work, but I find sitting on the couch, I don't feel good because I'm not being productive, and I like to be productive.
Yeah.
So it's always like I have to like really push myself to watch movies, but the fact I still do as often as I do, I think, is because I do love watching movies.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had that feeling before where like
100%.
it doesn't feel like we're getting anything done watching movies, and that was actually kind of part of the genesis for making the podcast is like if we turn watching movies into producing content, then if we're watching a movie, it is working.
Yeah.
Right.
But I posed this question to you in advance for you to think about it, but I love asking this question to all of our guests. Can you name me 3 films that describe your tastes in movies, whether it's just watching movies, stuff that you love to see in a movie, or making movies?
I think the 3 movies I would say most describe my taste in movies are Sam Raimi's Darkman, Adaptation, written by Charlie Kaufman, directed by Spike Jonze, and Silence of the Lambs, based on the novel by Thomas Harris. I forget who directed it.
Jonathan Demme.
Yes.
Well, I'd love to hear a little bit more about those because you're speaking to someone who is a big Sam Raimi fan who has not seen Darkman. So
Okay.
How would you
He's
pitch
a big Spider-Man fan.
How would you pitch
Yeah.
Darkman to someone who loves the Evil Dead movies, loves the Spider-Man movies, but has not seen that movie?
It's the perfect like middle ground of the Evil Dead and Spider-Man movies.
Okay.
Cool.
It's like imagine Spider-Man 2 if Dr. Octopus was the main character.
Oh, I like
You're
that.
speaking his language, yeah.
And Darkman's a really cool character because he was initially written actually to be the Shadow. Like that was Raimi tried to get the rights to the Shadow character and couldn't get them, so he made up his own character.
Darkman. Yeah.
And yeah, he's something of a combination of like a lot of like classic pulp heroes. So because of that, he's an anti-hero. And ultimately, like he has the Spider-Man villain origin. He's a scientist who had something horrible happen to him and then, goes to take his revenge. But because he's the hero of our story, we get to see that perspective, fully play out instead of him being treated as the villain.
That sounds really fascinating.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have to give that a watch sometime soon.
Yeah, for sure. And so Adaptation is another movie that I haven't seen. Hannah's seen it.
Yes.
And she wants me to watch it.
Yes, Charlie Kaufman is a really great screenwriter, and Spike
my
Jonze
favorite.
is very inspired. I mean, you like being John Malkovich. I think that's...
I also like being John Malkovich.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Adaptation is all about a writer, and I believe he's writing a novel. No, screenplay. And I believe it's like he has like writer's block.
Yeah.
Is that it? Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, you left out the interesting part about it, I feel.
Well, I'm trying to like...
Is that a spoiler?
keep
I don't
it
think it's a spoiler.
spoiler-free.
I don't think it's a spoiler because it's in the opening scene.
Okay. I'll go for it.
Yeah. So said writer is Charlie Kaufman as played by Nicolas Cage.
Oh, okay.
And they're twins, technically.
Twins.
Nicolas Cage plays twins.
Yes. So he plays Charlie Kaufman and his fictional brother, who is also a writer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's very weird and fun.
Yes.
Would you say you gravitate towards it because you're someone that's really into writing and maybe you feel some writer's block as experienced by your film noir, which is also about writer's block?
Yes, 100%. There was so much of that like I saw it at the right point in my life too, where it hit me right in the feels. Like I was trying to write my first feature and like nothing was happening. So it was like very relatable. It really pushed me in the right direction. I've also like, I gravitate a lot towards stories about just artists who are struggling to create their art. So like another great one is Tick, Tick, Boom.
Oh yeah, that's
which
great.
I have watched like 4 times since it came out. And Whiplash is another favorite of mine.
So good.
But basically anything that's about like the struggle of making art and like pushing yourself so far, and it's like, should you really be pushing yourself that far for that? Like, I think there's a lot of rise and grind culture in the arts community.
Right, for sure.
And I think all of those movies kind of make a good case against it. Even though these people are successful, like what do they give up for that? Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to make a letterbox list of movies that are like that. People like suffering for their art and like trying to push themselves like that. Do you have a letterbox?
I should start using it. Like I've had an account for like 4 years, but
I
don't think I've left a single review or logged a single film.
It is a fun community to be a part of, but it can be a lot like joke oriented sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite YouTube series is is Mr. Sunday Movies. He does this YouTube series where he'll basically like read these insane letterbox reviews he found to his friend, and then his friend has to guess like what movie it was for.
Oh, I think I've heard
That's
about
fun.
this.
Yeah.
So on the topic of these 3 movies, so you said Silence of the Lambs, Darkman, and Adaptation.
Yeah.
How do those 3 movies influence either your creative process or the kinds of movies you're making right now, or maybe that you want to make?
So definitely, like, you know, like I was talking about earlier, the struggle of making art is a theme I love to explore in films. I think that's just always so important for me to put on screen. I think one big thing too is like, I think adaptation is obviously very, very personal to Charlie Kaufman. And so I often, like, in the same vein, everything I make is in some way about myself.
Right.
Like, that sounds super pretentious, but
no, I mean,
we
it has to be
understand.
personal,
Yeah.
you know, otherwise it's maybe artificial.
like, even if nothing in the story is anything I've actually encountered in life, there's going to be like one character relationship or one component of this character that comes from me. So that's how I always try to approach it. I think that's been like, that's the big reason why I would put adaptation in there. I think Silence of the Lambs I've just always thought is interesting because I love serial killer movies. I love hunting down the killer, though. That's my favorite part. Like, I love the investigation component. I think that's so interesting, and that's why I don't really like Friday the 13th, for example, because there's no investigation. There's just dying.
So you like the analytical aspect, like
Yes.
putting something together, like writing.
Well, tell me you've
Yeah.
seen Zodiac then.
I haven't yet.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness,
come on.
that's like one of the ultimate, like, catch a serial killer.
I would
Yeah.
definitely love Zodiac. I
It
should
sounds like
check
it's right
that
up
out.
your alley.
Yes. And then I think, Darkman fits on there because I've always liked, like, you know, really exaggerated things when you can be a bit more fun.
Yeah.
And so even when I'm making something that is a bit more serious, I like to have like those exaggerated moments. Like another great movie that I think actually almost encapsulates all 3 of those things that I like go back to a lot is Knives Out.
Oh
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. I mean, that has
Absolutely.
great screenwriting as well. Like, you have to like fit it into all the pieces
Yeah.
and, you know, have the bookends and everything. That it's really clever. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was written on Fade In, which is the screenwriting software I use. So I
nice.
always boast about that.
Absolutely. I definitely love movies that don't take themselves too seriously, especially Sam Raimi movies. Like, I assume if we're talking about Darkman and Sam Raimi and Spider-Man, that you like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man
I love the
movies.
Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies.
Absolutely, yeah. I always come back to that moment at the end of the first one where the Green Goblin gets stabbed by his own glider, but just before it happens, you see Norman Osborn look up and he goes, "Oh." It's like,
And I think the key with that is really that it's funny, but it's also sincere.
Yeah.
I think sincerity is like something that we're not seeing in a lot of modern blockbusters. Like, I think a lot of the modern like superhero movies will just have like just ironic jokes making fun of everything, and like it's a lot better to like be funny but still be sincere. I find that's just so much more authentic and interesting.
I feel like that's emerging in like the indie scene. Like a lot of the A24 films lately.
Oh, I
are,
agree.
Like awkward, more down to earth type characters and less like
Yeah.
glamorous movie star productions.
Everything Everywhere All at Once was fantastic. No, A24 has made some great stuff. Swiss Army Man, I think, was way underrated.
I still want to see that.
Yeah.
We want to do like
Love
a Daniel Radcliffe a-thon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Blue Monday
Horns.
Marathon. Yeah. So bringing it back to directing.
Yeah.
When it comes to facilitating a set of crew members and actors, whether they're paid or volunteers, do you have a motto or a mantra or philosophy when it comes to directing and wrangling these people and trying to achieve a shared vision of yours?
That's interesting. Let me think about that for a second.
Absolutely. Like
Yeah.
one thing that Scott said, he didn't actually say this on mic, but he said it at Ottawa Comic Con, is that when someone comes to you with a question, you always have to have an answer. Even if it's the wrong answer, you just have to be able to answer it and be able to steer someone in that direction instead of being like, I don't know.
Even saying if you don't know, like, I'll think about it instead of saying because I said so.
Yeah. Or like, that's a really good question. You know, let's put our brains to
I
it
think
with
a big thing actually that I think about a lot is the job of the director is not to like have the perfect vision right away, but it's to kind of have listen to all the ideas and come up with the right one. I think that's really good. That I've always thought about is important. Like, I'm very open to like taking feedback from actors and crew on certain things. There's always a line when like the AC goes up to me and starts saying, hey, this is what the actors should do in this scene. That irks me a little, but I'm very happy to like go back and forth with the actors and the DP on what's going to work. So like I like to be flexible in that regard. I also find I'm always thinking as the editor, and I think that's just because I've spent so much time editing.
That's really useful.
Yeah, but I'm always thinking about how is this shot going to cut with the next 3 shots. And sometimes Colin and I are on set, and he'll say something like, okay, what do we do for this shot? And then I'll like explain the next like 4 shots to him, and he'll be like, I said for this shot. Yeah.
Do you think that makes you an efficient filmmaker because you're already seeing the edit in your head, so you cut maybe some of the fluff that other directors would be shooting?
I think to an extent. I like to shoot a lot though, because I like to have options for that edit, even though I'm seeing it in my head. Because I have like, if this doesn't work, I want this, and if this doesn't work, I want that. I think it's not. I worry I'm actually the opposite of efficient sometimes, because I'm thinking so far ahead in terms of what shots are going to be where, that like I'm not at the right point to tell my crew what's happening right now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right on.
I've definitely also on the last pretty much the whole year I've been going, I wish I had the right AD, and I still haven't. I've worked with a few people who've done really good jobs, but I still haven't really found the right AD who I can go back to every time. So I've either not had an AD or just kind of said, hey, we just don't have a production schedule. We're just going to make this as we can, which is easier when your crew is like 3 people.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a tough role, because in order to do it properly, you kind of have to play like the bad cop.
Yeah.
And to get like the schedule done and like, not waste everyone's time. But then you act like you seem like the jerk, because you're like, okay, we don't need to shoot another take. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
That it seems like you're against the production, but it's like, that's your job, is to wrangle people in. So that's probably why it's so tough to get when, having saying this from a position of being Andrew's AD on his feature. So
yeah. I was AD on a feature last year, which was actually the most days I've ever worked for one production.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was my first time doing it like outside of a student film. And I learned very much, okay, this is not what I want to be doing, because I'm always thinking about, other things that the AD does not need to be thinking about.
It's not,
and I'm trying to be too nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we got the film shot.
Balance. Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's the important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, different people have different strengths for different roles, like our friend Kevin, who you've met, he has a history of always wanting to shoot more. And this is coming from a corporate video background. Anytime we're on set, I'll reach the point where I'm like, yeah, we got enough. We should go. And Kevin's like, okay, what about this one more shot? I think we can get this one more shot. And then we end up staying later and later and later, which leads to some really awesome footage. But we know that Kev's not going to make the best AD, even though he makes a fantastic DP.
Oh, right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, having worked with him and known him, he's definitely a perfectionist, which makes him a great filmmaker. But sometimes you have to be like, Kevin, you did a great job. You can just leave.
That's funny. Yeah, one thing Colin and I have talked about is he's almost my reverse AD, where so the AD's job is to get the director to, just focus on the creative stuff and, by taking over all the logistical stuff. But I get so caught up in the logistical stuff when I'm producing and directing my own stuff that then Colin's job becomes to, drag me back into the creative stuff.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's always good to have a creative partner that can help balance you out in that way. Andrew definitely has more of like a creative drive to do that kind of thing. And I'm able to rein him in a little bit and keep him on schedule. So
because my experience as an AD, I'll get to a point where I'm like, I think we're good. Let's move on. And then Colin will be the one to say, hey, maybe one more take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, within reason, like as an AD, like you're there to help the production. If they feel like another take is going to make the production better, then sometimes you just got to be like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
It's finding the balance.
Mm-hmm.
So bringing it to a negative space just for a moment, and then I promise we'll come back to positive. Can you tell me about a time, either like a day on set or a string of experiences in one project, where it felt like everything was going wrong at once? Because I know this is something that some people can relate to when they're going through their own personal projects, where it feels like everything's crumbling and they're like, is it even worth it? And I'd love to know if you feel any similar feelings like that from time to time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that noir film we were talking about earlier that I made in September, like I spent the entire month thinking it wasn't going to work. I did not think it would work until I saw an assembly cut. And even then I was like, okay, this is all right. I didn't think it was really good until it was completely finished. Because I was going through some personal stuff that month. And on top of that, we had our original idea really depended on one location that we didn't end up being able to get. So we had to come up with a whole new idea in 3 weeks. And I wasn't feeling motivated to create anything, and I wasn't coming up with anything. And then I put together this hackneyed script about a depressed writer over the course of a weekend. I got up at 5 a.m. to finish it on the last day, just because I was like, oh, I'm so mad and we're never going to finish this thing. And I was like, well, it's 5 a.m. I'm awake. I don't have to work for 4 hours. Let's go. And I just pounded the thing out.
Wow.
That's the character. Yeah,
exactly. It was very, very much the story of trying to make that film.
Yeah, well, I was attached to that idea, especially when he said, basically, at least he got it done. Even if it was a pile of garbage, at least he got it done. Because that was kind of my mantra for the script that I wrote earlier this year. Is I was like, I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to write, and no matter what comes out, at least something's on the page. And I said to myself, no matter what happens with this, I'm going to finish it. I don't care if I have to act in every single role. I don't care if I have to film it on my phone. It's at least going to get done, because then I can say that it's done and I can move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that perspective as well. And
that's very much what I was going through that month and what ended up happening. Because even a few weeks before that, when we wrapped up film 8, I had kind of said to Colin, hey, maybe we should just leave it at 8. We called the thing 12 Tales. We said one every year for 12 months.
Oh, okay.
I want to make my feature.
You just made that connection of the 12 Tales?
Yeah.
There you go.
But I was like, I want to make my feature, is it really worth spending all this time and money and energy on 4 more movies? Is my feature just going to be worse if we do that? And he said, no, well, not if we take the time next year to make sure that we actually prep it properly. But then beyond that, he also said to me, if we do not finish all 12 films, we will regret it for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. And it's 4 more films, but it's also 4 more learning experiences.
You
can learn something different from each production that you can then apply to your feature. So your feature will end up being that much better.
Exactly. And that kind of dragged me back in. But I really thought maybe film, even after that, I was like, maybe month 9, I'm just not going to finish anything. But we did. And now we've finished 10. So 2 left.
I'm sure it feels even so much better that you struggled with number 9 so much, but you were able to get it done. It must feel like such a relief.
Yeah, and then it was one of the best ones too, somehow.
Absolutely.
It was really fun and engaging.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then with film 10, I kind of got to learn from that not all of them have to be that good. Sometimes you can just make something really stupid and really funny. And so that was kind of good that we had to kind of do that with film 10, and I had to not be precious about it because we were doing it in 48 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So bringing it back to the positive, what's the most fun you've ever had on set or just on a project overall? I know we always tend to remember the bad stuff because it turns into the best stories, and then we can either tell people about those stories or apply them to later scripts, but hopefully some good stuff comes to mind. Yeah,
I think honestly, one of the most fun things that I got to do was our pop-up film school. We actually got to make our 7th film as part of that. So kind of the fact of just getting to work with all these people we'd spent the week training to get to actually execute one of the films that we were going to make anyway. And that was just really fun because we had a bigger crew than we normally got to have. And there were people who we had trained, and so we knew they were good. And we got to just, we had all had such a fun week learning and training together. And it was so much fun to just execute all of that in a film. And they were also excited to be there. And, you know, like, honestly, one of the things that was best of all was it wasn't my money.
So true.
Yeah.
Gives you a little bit of freedom there.
Yeah, no, that felt great. Just it was such a nice set day, and we had such a simple shoot. And we actually still made a really good film out of it that everyone was really happy with.
Awesome.
It's really nice to have enthusiasm on an independent level, because it's hard to get people that are reliable, show up, they're nice, and they're also enthusiastic about the project.
For sure.
Absolutely. Now, it's always great to get people on board and enthusiastic about, you know, making the film. But when it comes to putting your film out there online, or if you're screening it in person, or just trying to get people interested in it, do you find it hard to get people to care about your personal projects?
You know, it's funny. I used to find it really hard, and I think that was before I made as many connections as I have from making so many. So I think it is partly about just continuing to put stuff out and continuing to get your name out there.
Right.
It was kind of funny recently. I saw a post recently in Ottawa Filmmakers that was kind of like, you know, I have a young person interested in film. Where do I go? And then, you know, I commented myself pretty much right away, right? And shared some of my resources. And then 4 other people immediately were like, yeah, go to Ben.
Oh, that's so nice.
That felt really cool. And I think that's been kind of the same thing I've noticed with my films. When I was posting my first films, or my earlier films from before this year, people weren't really looking at them. And now it's I have to field emails of where do I see this now? Where do I find this? So I think it's just getting the people invested, not just in the film, but also in you and your artistic journey, right, I think is really the key. Mm-hmm. For example, I donated $30 to a film on Kickstarter not that long ago. Mm-hmm. It was because it was someone who knew someone I knew, right? So it's on this scale, it's not as much about reaching the unknown audience, it's about reaching that known audience.
That's smart about marketing yourself. You get them to care about you, and then they'll follow along with your projects.
So I guess the logical extreme of that is to do a podcast or a YouTube series where you can get that kind of parasocial audience invested in you, and then they'll be more invested in your films. But absolutely, I haven't tried that yet because I don't know who has time to do those things.
It seems like at least you're able to, the nature of your job and your creative projects, you're able to foster a really nice community locally, at least anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
So wrapping up here, you've talked about, you've made 10 films so far out of this 12 film goal, and you're gearing up to start a feature next year. Tell us about what's coming up next, either in the next week to month, in the next month to year, or in the next 5 years in your head, if you want to tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'd love to, next year I'm hoping to make my own independent feature. So we'll be working with a lot of the same people we've worked with over the 12 short films. Mm-hmm. I think the goal with this is to hit some of those higher tier film festivals and kind of get noticed a bit on there. Not necessarily Sundance, Slamdance. That would be nice though. Mm-hmm. But some of those just Canadian Screen Award qualifying, or even below that. Just kind of getting a feature at festivals, I think will be really good for networking and building that career from there. I would love to eventually transition into doing feature films as my full-time job. But obviously the in-between process is I want to keep creating that pipeline and opportunity for young people to make their own films. Absolutely. And to get involved in working in film. So I think it's an interesting thing because I could go either way in terms of my eventual long-term career. I could see myself being a DGC director, or I could see myself, being one of the DGC union people who makes sure that workers' rights are respected.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You could do both.
Absolutely. Now, do you want to divulge any details about what you're thinking / hoping for your feature? Or are you going to play that pretty close to the chest?
Well, I'll say this. Our next film, so film 11, is going to be a short film version of it, and we're hoping to have that at Digi60. So
Cool.
You can find out more about it through the short project that we'll be screening there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic to hear. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you online?
At Benny B. Bergeron on Facebook, not Twitter. I've never been on Twitter.
It's called X now.
Oh, right. But no, I've never been on that. So Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, I'm at Benny B. Bergeron. And you can also look at my website, which is benbergeron.ca. Yeah.
All right. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you at future Kinos and seeing more of your content out there.
Thank you. Yeah, you too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was really nice to chat with you about all the creative pursuits that you're doing lately.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really nice to chat with you about the AD stuff, actually.
For sure.
I was glad I did not totally fall on deaf ears with that.
For sure.
And thanks to everybody listening out there. Look forward to more interesting interviews like this in the future. And then we'll be looping back around to some more film reviews. Thanks so much.